Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tuesday, July 1st, 2008 joint meeting of the Glendale City Council, the Glendale Redevelopment Agency, and the Glendale Housing Authority. Mr. Kasakian, could you call the roll for the council, please?
Council members: Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Yusefian.
Here.
Mayor Draymond.
Here.
For the redevelopment agency, please.
Agency members: Draymond.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Yusefian.
Here.
Chairman Najarian.
Here. For the agency, please.
For the authority.
Authority, I mean.
Authority members: Draymond.
Here.
Mincy.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Razian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chairman Yusefian.
Here.
Thank you. Let's hear the item at 1A and B.
Certainly. According to the agenda for the July 1st, 2008 joint public meeting of the Glendale City Council, Housing Authority, and Redevelopment Agency, which this agenda was posted on Thursday, June 26, 2008 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. The first item on the agenda is Director of Planning regarding green building and sustainable programs. 1A is council motion directing staff to develop a Green Glendale portion of the city website for advertising and summarizing all incentives and policies. And A2 is to require all new design city projects to design and build to LEED standards and apply for LEED certification. 1B is council motion directing staff to facilitate development of green building policies for private development as part of general plan update for the advisory group planned as part of the public outreach program.
And I want to thank the city clerk again for rescuing the mayor on that when you did it so subtly that I don't think the public caught it, but I did, and I appreciate that fact. I asked him to go directly to the item, skipped over the report, but he merged them and made me look good, so thank you so much. And that's a tough job, believe me. So let us go to city manager.
And Mr. Mayor, I'll ask Alan Loomis, Principal Urban Designer, to give you the staff report on this matter. Alan?
Thank you, Mr. City Manager, members of the Council, Mr. Mayor, members of the Housing Authority and Development Agency. I hope I've collected everyone there. This item is a follow-up to the Council's request for information on LEED and other green building standards. This report in front of you today is the result of research by a number of staff members from various departments, and before we go any further, I'd like to acknowledge them because they're all here in the audience. We have Shea Eccleston from Public Works, Mike Fortney from Community Redevelopment and Housing, Hagap Kasapian from Parks and Recreation, John Toctalian from the City Manager's office participated, as did Hector Gutierrez, Craig Cunin, and Kevin Todd from GWP. And this committee was chaired by Stephanie Reich, our senior urban designer, who will give the bulk of the report along with from Mike Fortney. So not everybody's going to be speaking.
Thank you.
But as the range of the number of people and departments involved in this effort indicate, this is a topic that has a considerable amount of depth and dimensions to it, and there's obviously a wealth of information that could be unearthed on this topic. And this report is not intended to get into all that information at this time. It's really intended as an introduction to this subject, because as you can see from the report and this kind of summary of other cities, there's a lot of different ways that cities have approached this topic, and any city that has adopted green building standards has really tailored their standards and expectations to the priorities and values of their particular community. So some cities have adopted LEED standards, others have adopted their own unique standards, developed their own set of expectations. Each city has different requirements and expectations for themselves as a public agency, as well as for private development and enterprise. And each city also has slightly different ways of administering and staffing their green building program. So with this kind of range of possibilities, there really isn't exactly a green building program that can be pulled off the shelf and sort of plugged into Glendale. It really seemed inappropriate to recommend at this point a particular way of approaching this without getting some further policy direction from the council as to how we would answer the question, how green should Glendale be, and what kind of process we should develop and formulate to begin to answer that question. So with that, we've actually did nonetheless provide at least three kind of options for you to consider. The first is really to begin simply to kind of promote the programs that we already have in place. We've included those as context The second is to make a commitment as a municipal organization that we would, for projects that the city funds and develops, would be green of some fashion. We probably need to come back with more information on that possible direction. And then the third, kind of most expansive possible direction you might consider is for us to begin to explore how we would have a green building program, what kind of process we'd set up to establish that program, and what that program might entail. So this is really a policy discussion about, as I said, how to answer this question, how green Glendale should be. There's a lot of information we'd probably have to come back to you with. But to kind of go through some of the highlights of the reports, I'll ask Stephanie Reich, our senior designer, to hit on that, along with Mike Fortney from the Housing Department. Stephanie?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, Housing Authority members, Redevelopment Agency members. As Mr. Loomis mentioned, green building is an important component of an overall sustainability policy, as green building account for a substantial percentage of resources consumed. As stated in the report, while the practice of green building may require additional costs up front, effective green building can lead to substantially reduced operating costs, especially in these times of escalating energy costs. There are numbers of systems of rating green building. Rating systems enable a certain level of verification, which would be required if the city were to implement any mandatory or incentive programs for green building. LEED is the program which is most widely known and widely used. Green Point Rate is also outlined in the report because that has been specifically developed for residential projects within California. Some cities, such as West Hollywood and Santa Monica, administer their own locally developed programs. Our report outlines green building programs in other California cities, including Los Angeles and Long Beach, which both require LEED or LEED certified equivalent for their municipal projects and for private development beyond a certain threshold. These cities have adopted the intent of LEED so as not to burden developers with the certification process and the costs associated with that. The certification process requires a LEED accredited professional to provide proof that all the items on their very extensive checklist have been met to the satisfaction of the USGBC. The intent of LEED means that city staff is doing that analysis and making that determination. The city of Pasadena is the only city that we know of so far that requires LEED Silver. Our research on other cities revealed a few commonalities. Each city that has mandated any green building program for private development also has placed requirements on its own buildings, usually more rigorous, for all of their municipal projects. Each city has engaged in substantial public outreach, and there is typically significant outreach to the development community prior to mandating any program for private development. Mike Fortney is here to present some of the things that we've already done in green building. Mike?
Mr. Fortney, with prevention in mind.
Yeah, right. Good afternoon. Mike Fortney, I'm the Housing Project Manager, and I just wanted to shed light on some of the things that the Community Development and Housing staff is already doing. We currently have 4 affordable housing projects that have committed to exceeding Title 24 by 15% or more. Those projects include the already constructed Metropolitan City Lights, the currently under construction Metro Loma project, as well as Glendale City Lights project, and Garfield Gardens, a 30-unit project. All those projects have committed to exceeding Title 24, Chapter 6 by 15% or more. We have another project, the Doran Gardens project, which is a 60-unit for sale proposed project. We staff from CD&H as well as GWP, planning, and a number of other departments throughout the city have posted 2 green charrettes. The intent is to try to get that project to 35% or greater of Title 24. Those are some of the projects that we've been working on now. In addition to that, CD&H staff have also been working with GWP to install photovoltaic systems on some of the Habitat for Humanity projects. The one that is currently under construction at 711 North Kenwood, it was deemed probably not best for photovoltaic, but we do have somebody that's going to go back out there and take a look and take another look at that. And then some of the things that we're also looking at doing for the future, we've looked at energy efficiency utility standards. adding green elements to the single-family and multifamily rehab programs, and working with nonprofit organizations such as Grid Alternatives and GWP to include photovoltaic in our single-family rehab programs.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
So just to conclude, reiterate the recommendations that we've made. We recommend to develop a portion of the city's website, and IS has already started to draft that, which would incorporate all of the sustainable programs that are already in place. If the council would like to explore commitment to green building for future city projects, including public-private projects, based on the level you'd like to achieve, we could come back to you with more detailed information on the types and sizes of projects you'd like to include, what level you'd like to include them at. We've provided a handout with some information about the different levels of LEED, the costs and benefits associated with that. We recommend that outreach and development of green building policy for private development be considered as part of the general plan update process. Since substantial outreach will occur as part of the general plan process, we thought this could be added easily to the scope of work. The general plan outreach process is currently underway and will be at full strength in the fall. In addition, overall sustainability goals for the city could be considered as part of that general plan outreach process. If the council would like to consider implications of broader sustainability policy for all city projects and programs, we would come back to you with more information and recommendations on how to investigate that. That concludes the presentation portion of the report. As we mentioned, we have a number of staff members that are available for questions.
Okay, thank you so much. I need a clarification from some of the people who submitted speaker cards very quickly before we go forward. Nancy Kent made her have that clear. Mr. Milano made it clear 1A2. Mr. Khan, you just put 1. So I don't know which of those items you wish to address. There's 1A1, 1A2, and there's 1B. All of them, okay. And then Demetrius Klapsis, you didn't indicate any of those. So which? Okay. 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 Thank you. Let me go to my colleagues. Mr. Yusefian, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, a few weeks ago, Mr. Quintero and I went to the League of California Cities. I think we both went to the meeting, a seminar that was about green buildings. Based on some of the speakers who were they specialize in this type of work, California is actually very fortunate because of the Title 24. We're very close to LEED Silver. With few minor modifications, you can easily meet that, according to the speaker. And based on my, expertise in construction, I would say it's just going to take a little bit tweaking here and there, and to use the right sustainable material, you could actually get there rather quickly. So I tend to believe that if we're going to, considering what the energy cost is today, and it's not just about energy cost, it's also about the amount of building material we use and the way we use them. I think I would like to see us follow in the footsteps of Pasadena and just say anything that is brand new, gets built in City of Glendale, needs just to meet the LEED certified silver. Whether it's a single-family house or it's a multifamily, whether it's the City of Glendale's own building, it's I think you should at least meet the silver, and it wouldn't be that difficult to get there. That would be my opinion on that. And I think we need to also look at some of our own practices in the city, the way we write codes. This Saturday, I went to, I think, Metro Loma, one of the new affordable housings we're doing. I would urge all of my colleagues to go down to the basement and look up. There is hundreds, if not thousands, of linear feet of copper, one after another, one after another, one after another, because we require separate metering for water. just the amount of natural resources that is used for that type of construction, because we require a certain code and they are doing it. I mean, I don't know if that is a very smart way of using your natural resources. That's an awful lot of copper. That took a lot of energy to create, and what you could have achieved in the old days with just one pipe, now you're having probably, if you have 40 units, there's 40 pipes going and coming back. And if it's a 60 unit, it's going to be 60 pipes going and coming back. So on one hand, we're saying about let's be green, be more sustainable, be a little bit more frugal about how we use the Earth's natural resources. On the other hand, we write codes that actually goes out there and overuses the most expensive natural resources of the world. So I think they both kind of have to work together. And that's my comments.
Okay. Mr. Quintero.
What was interesting about that seminar was number one, the different types of certifications that are available besides LEEDs and the Green Point. I believe they said something like 15 or 20 different possibilities. But what was also striking was the amount of money that is saved when contractors, developers, and architects use these green opportunities. I mean, they literally had project after project in the West, in the East, all over the United States and Canada, showing the kind of energy savings that the projects have incurred as a result of sort of building it right to begin with. So I'm all for a system that's going to maybe dovetail with Pasadena, and I think the staff can take a look at the city of LA and see what the different cities are doing, and try to come up with something that works for Glendale. And I think the sooner we get to it, the better. I also like the idea of the website. I think that would, developing a Green Glendale on the city website that can advertise, summarize all the initiatives and policies, or incentives and policies. Quite often I'm asked specifically about solar installation and just different things. I always refer them to the building department, those inquiries, but I do think that if we have it on the website, people will respond. There's no question about it. I actually spoke to a company that does solar installations, and they have so many people calling that they can't keep up with the demand. That's how well they're doing. So whatever we can do, I think also the city of Glendale needs to start thinking about raising our incentive for property owners, multifamily and homeowners that want to install solar and other energy-saving devices. So I'm all for this. I think the sooner we get to it, the better. I'm not sure that we need a commission. I think we have so many commissions in this city. I'm not sure that we need a commission to, either regulate or come up with ideas or anything else. But I'm ready to do whatever we need to do to move this forward. It's time, and economically, this cycle that we're in, I don't see any end to it. I don't think 2 years from now energy is going to be costing any less, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now. So let's get moving. We actually have some templates that we can use: Pasadena, Long Beach, LA, West Hollywood. So it's a great report. I'm very happy with what you've put together so far.
Mr. Weaver, do you have anything before we go to the public?
I'd like to hear the public first.
All right. And Laura, anything before we go to the public?
No.
Okay. I've already checked with this thing. All right. First speaker is Nancy Kent. Marty?
My name's Nancy Kent. I'm a Glendale homeowner, and today I'm also speaking on behalf of the Sierra Club Verdugo Hills Group. The cost of energy, as we've just heard, is on a lot of people's minds now. And, okay, first, regarding public buildings. Last December, the City Council wisely voted unanimously that the 2 new Glendale Water and Power buildings will achieve a LEED Silver rating from the U.S. Green Building Council. It's estimated the extra front-end cost to attain LEED Silver will be recouped in less than 8 years because of the lower operating costs that will continue to save taxpayer money for decades. 2003, Glendale College and the City of Los Angeles adopted policies for LEED certified. 2004, Governor Schwarzenegger ordered new and renovated state buildings should be LEED Silver or higher. 2006, Pasadena adopted a policy for LEED certified and increased that to LEED Silver in 2008. So please adopt a policy that Glendale's municipal new buildings and remodeling jobs achieve at least LEED certified from the U.S. Green Building Council. Regarding private development, the green building requirements in Pasadena, Los Angeles, West Hollywood, and Long Beach mentioned in the staff report show it's time for Glendale to adopt requirements, not just offer incentives. Now, you can let more time pass while you gather input from all stakeholders, but in February, you received significant input from a significant stakeholder, the Verdugo Gardens project developers, a voluntary pledge to attain some level of LEED certification for their 24-story building. That was admirable. Glendale property owners want to keep property values high, so Glendale should not be the community that attracts the developers who want to build on the cheap. The developers not interested in things like energy costs, water usage, indoor air quality, and using up landfill space. The developers who prefer the least amount of regulation, who would avoid places like Pasadena because of its sustainability requirements. Glendale should have citywide requirements at least as strong as Pasadena's 2006 ordinance. That is, to meet the intent of LEED certified level, verified by city staff, starting at these thresholds. Commercial, 25,000 square feet. Tenant improvements, 25,000 square feet of new gross floor area. And mixed-use and multifamily projects, 4 stories high. Also, offer the incentives in the Glendale Downtown Specific Plan and require U.S. Green Building Council verification for incentives. Developers should be able to get technical assistance for meeting Glendale's green building requirements through the Public Benefits Program of Glendale Water and Power. We should not wait until Glendale's general plan gets updated for you to adopt sustainable building requirements for large projects. Last, regarding the City of Glendale website, it's the frosting on the cake, but it's also marketing for our city. On the home page, right now there's a row of 8 choices down the left side. Add a box for a choice called something like Sustainability or Green City or Green Glendale to lead to a screen with a summary of Glendale's achievements and future plans for sustainability, plus choices to get information that's already on Glendale's website about what various Glendale departments are already doing for sustainability. Choices like water and power programs, sustainable development guidelines, downtown mobility study, composting workshops. Adding this choice to the home page would be marketing to point out sustainability is something that's valued here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Good. All right, our next...
Here are my comments.
Thank you. Our next speaker was Mr. Milano, who has had to leave. However, he has submitted some written comments. So let me, let's see, he says Mr. Yusefian and Mr. Draymond, let me give them to Mr. Yusefian, and he may want to raise them. So I think some of them are of value. I'm going to go on to the next speaker, so you have a chance to look at those, Mr. Yusefian. Mr. Khan.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Councilman, City staff. My name is Rodney Kahn, and my offices are here in the City of Glendale. I was reading the newspaper and I saw the reducing our carbon footprint, and we're talking about green. and we're talking about leads and all of these buzzwords and trying to understand how that translates into a policy. I think we talked about there was a speaker that mentioned the Verdugo Gardens, and I think that when we were working on that project, that was something that was very important, was to get LEED certification. Actually, the City Center 2 project also is looking at being LEED certified. Those are very large-scale projects, but some of the smaller-scale projects we're working on are trying to go under that same path. I think that what's being proposed right now is very responsible. I think this is something the City of Glendale should be looking at, should be discussing, and something that we should all endorse and support. The reality is, I just want to understand it. Last several months, I've been looking into different publications, just trying to educate myself, because there's some of this is it's so fluid. It's evolving, it's changing, these techniques. I don't understand all of it and what it means. When there's a comment about all projects being silver LEED certified, that sounds very good, but I don't know what that translates in terms of costs. That's something I'd like to understand. I have a great personal interest in this area. I think this is something, and I think Mr. Quintero pointed it out, even if energy prices do come down, which they probably won't, our housing or the economy does bounce back, we still have this. I don't think we're going backwards. I think we'll always be going forwards. And I think this is something that we have to consider. I agree that a commission shouldn't be established, but I do think that there should be a panel that's established, because as techniques change and evolve, so might these ordinances and so might these policies. As it relates specifically, though, to the staff report, the policy alternatives in terms of a website, I think that that's a very key item for people to be able to go to and use. I think it should have everything from recycling building materials. I talked a little bit a month or two ago about drought-tolerant planting. I mean, it could run the gamut, and it should, and we should have that updated. In terms of public-private projects, I think there should be some LEED certification or equivalent. And I don't understand what equivalent means, but I'd like to. And maybe that's something that, as this evolves, maybe we all can understand. And then lastly, as it relates to private development, I think that there was a previous speaker that talked about not just new construction, but also tenant improvements. And that's things that we should be looking at as well, because we might not see a lot of new construction in the next few years because of the economy, but we will be seeing tenant improvements. How do we implement these policies in that as well? And those are some of the thoughts and some of the things that I'm interested in that I just wanted to share with you here today. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kahn. Demetrius Klapsis.
Good afternoon. My name is Demetrius Klapsis. I come to you not only as a resident of Glendale, but also as a member of the Board of Directors for the LA chapter of the U.S. Green Building Council. USGBC is the authority that coined LEED and the many products. It is important to know that there is not just one LEED program. There is LEED for homes, there is LEED for commercial interiors, there is LEED for existing buildings, there is a program in pilot right now for LEED for neighborhood development, so we can actually make large-scale developments in a way that makes sense. There are two things that we need to distinguish. There are the buildings that are public buildings, there are buildings that are built by private owners. In Southern California, I would say that the majority, if not almost all municipalities, including the County of LA, they require LEED ratings for their own buildings. And this is something that makes sense because at the end of the day, they save money in operating these buildings, in maintaining these buildings. It's something that they see a lot as time passes. As far as private programs are concerned, there are some cities that actually have taken the torch and became the pioneers. Pasadena is one, City of Los Angeles another one, and actually the County of LA is now considering a very thorough program to establish. The issue of cost for LEED is something that we hear a lot. and it is a fear. I think it's more of a fear of the unknown than is actually a reality of what the LEED program rating does. There are two things as far as LEED specific cost is concerned. Most of architects and contractors and engineers do have LEED accredited professionals in their staff. Right now, there are a few thousand LEED accredited professionals in the Southern California area, and the ranks are growing by the day. We think that to certify a project through U.S. Green Building Council, it's not a big cost in the cost of a project to be developed. What it might be a cost is what is called commissioning. And what is commissioning is basically some specialist, usually an engineer, goes through a building and verifies that the systems that were designed were installed properly. And it's actually amazing to see what they come up with. Buildings that had their fans wired the wrong direction, and instead of bringing cold air into the building, they're actually bringing warm outside air. So it's basically a insurance policy, if you may, for you as the private or public developer, that the building that you design and you paid for, it's actually operating according to specifications. The LA chapter of the U.S. Green Building Council will be more than happy to assist the city of Glendale in any type of public outreach, in any type of program that we can bring out experts and educate the public, educate the staff, and help move forward with this motion. We support the motion, and we actually would love to see it to be expanded in the private sector as well as the public sector. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Klapsis. Okay, Mr. Yusefian, anything that you care to share from that card at this point? That was my last.
I'm going to try to read this to an extent. Mr. Milano says, if the purpose of the LEED is construction, conservation, would not the outcome be a target for maximum usage, kilowatt hours per dwelling per day, e.g. 10 kilowatt hours per day per dwelling? Would not the outcome from water usage be a maximum usage of water per dwelling per day? For example, you save 150 gallons per day. If we try the outcome method, then the certification is secondary, and that's what it basically says.
Okay. Thank you for adding that to the record. Let me go now to my colleagues, and we'll go with Mr. Yusefian.
I'd like to ask a question from the last speaker, if possible.
Mr. Klapsis, if you're going to respond, you'll need to come back to the podium, please.
My understanding of the LEED certification, it's not just energy. There are several issues as you go. One of them happens to be air quality, and the air quality inside the unit. It has to do with, for example, the VOCs that is out there. So they recommend you put hardwood floors instead of carpet because of the emissions from the carpet compared to solid floors. If you're going to use hardwood floors, use, let's say, bamboo instead of using mahogany. Is that so? Could you very quickly go through some of the categories?
Yes.
There's like major categories in LEED.
Yes, and actually, as the staff report has put it actually very eloquently, there are 5 major categories that the LEED program is concerned. The first of all has to do with site. You have to build a building at an appropriate site in an appropriate way. Keep enough area that you can infiltrate water into the ground. Keep some green area as well. The second one has to do with water usage. Try to find different ways that you can conserve water, either inside the building or outside the building as far as irrigation is concerned. And also try to capture water that falls on the roof of your building and reuse it. The third one, of course, is energy, and energy is something that is very easy to tackle, and I think that here in California, actually this becomes a little bit, if you may, secondary from the point of view that we actually have the strongest energy policies in the nation. Nonetheless, if you're going to certify a building as a LEED building, you have to score at least 2 points in the energy category. The third one has to do with the indoor environmental quality, and this starts from trying to take smoke, second-hand smoke, away from the occupants of the building with things like, for example, formaldehyde. We all heard the debacle about the Katrina trailers, that the people that were living in them were having all these health issues out of urea formaldehyde, but there is also a myriad of other chemicals that come with building materials that should not be coming with building materials, and the LEED system is trying to regulate that. Also, it has to do with the materials itself, trying to build buildings in a sustainable way, try to build buildings with materials that they come from sources that can be rapidly renewable, that come from sources that protect our forests, such as FSC certified lumber, but also come from local areas within a 500-mile radius that actually A, supports the local economy, and B, we don't spew diesel carrying things on trucks from one side of the country to the other. Finally, there is a last section that talks about innovation in design. You actually get 1 credit if you use a LEED accredited professional in your design team. And then if you do things above and beyond the standard, or you find some ideas that nobody else had thought before, you get extra points there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Weaver.
Well, I was sitting here thinking about past when I grew up here in the 1940s. We didn't worry about getting around town. We didn't have any freeways. It was easy to drive downtown Los Angeles. My father built here because it was only a 15-minute drive from Glendale to downtown Los Angeles. And we eventually built freeways to deal with the increased traffic. Now we're talking about high-speed rail to move traffic. It's an evolutionary process. I grew up, we had plenty of water. Didn't talk about water conservation, whatever. But as the population increased, what are we doing now? Talking about ways to conserve on water. Electrical, we didn't have any problems with electrical. Plenty of electricity, but as the population increased, now we're dealing with potential shortages of electrical as technology gives us more equipment to plug in, to charge and use. So electrical energy is another problem now. Gasoline I think costs 25 cents a gallon or something. Drive around, no problems. Now it's $5 a gallon, and what's Detroit doing? Looking at other forms of propellant for cars. No matter what you talk about, that's something new. Housing, it used to be all single-family residence just about, and now we're down to townhouses and condos and vertical development, all because there's more people. Same with air quality. There was no smog when I grew up. It came in the 50s, and we started looking at air quality. EPA, all this came along. What I'm getting at is LEED is no different. As populations increase, and we hear there's going to be equivalent of 3 more Chicago, Illinois, moving out here in the next 20, 30 years, we're going to have even more challenges. Now, we can either wait until the crisis is facing us in the face, or we can act on it ahead of time. Few cities have LEED. I think we ought to have it now. And I look down here at silver. That's 30% potential savings, whatever that means. Gold is only 0.3% more to get another 7%. If you have a $100 million project, 0.3% is another $300,000, which in building any building will be passed on to the consumer anyhow. So is silver enough? I don't know. I firmly think that eventually platinum will become the way to go, simply because of the resources and everything we're trying to deal with. You can only go so far with all the resources that you have. So there's people out there that have not yet invented what we're going to have tomorrow. New technologies come on stream, some by accident, some by scientists absolutely doing it. But it works both ways. But we do know it's going to happen. There's going to be other things we don't even know about yet that will come forth to deal with what we have. So, summing up, yeah, I'm for at least a silver, and I don't see why you don't even talk gold. Of course, what I don't have here is the breakdown that I would want to see on that investment. What's it costing? What are you going to have to do to any building, house versus commercial, high-rise? What's changing? Because these numbers are just national figures, estimated. You'd have to have more. But I believe this city has got to start. And it should at least start with the silver, and we ought to look at least the gold in the near future, and require it across the board. And no, we do not need a commission. We don't need a panel. We have professionals on staff, and if they can't keep an eye on lead, then there's something wrong with them. So as things come online, staff can let us know. We ought to tighten the belt or require additionals, and we can air it out here. The public can come in and tell us what they think of it. But we've got to start. So I'm all for it, but no panel, no more commissions. We got enough.
Okay, Mr. Weaver. Mr. Mincy.
I'm so glad we're talking about this, and it shows the forward thinking of Glendale and what we're trying to do. I thought Ms. Kent's idea on the our city site, or website, where they could go in that section where it says green and find out what's the latest on what's being talked about or what we're doing, was a very good idea. And by the way, Mr. Kasakian, I think you're doing a good job on that website. It's coming along good. You can get so much information now that you, when you need it. But I certainly support this concept.
Ms. Braza?
It's hard for me to digest at this time, but I'm thinking if the other cities did, why can't we do? Why can't Glendale do so? I'm for lead silver. So.
Mr. Najarian.
Thank you. I do fully support creating a policy in which all the city buildings meet the LEEDs silver. As a member, Nancy mentioned the community college. As a member of the college board in 2003, we did vote to require all the college buildings to meet the LEED silver certification. As a result, the new parking structure, although perhaps not LEED certified and perhaps dealing with some constraints as the type of building it is, does have a solar panel array on the top level in conjunction, of course, developed in conjunction with our GWP, which is a great step forward. Their Allied Health building is also going to be a LEEDs silver, is a LEEDs silver standard. So I definitely support that for all our buildings, and I would like to take steps to encourage, I guess, on 1B in particular, directing staff to facilitate the development of the policies for the private development. I'm not, again, I agree with Mr. Weaver and some of the other speakers. I don't think we need to create a commission. That the commission in itself may be contrary to efficiency in design. So let's not go there. We've got clearly we've got some knowledgeable staff and some consultants that can help us on this. My only question is, are we permitted to appropriate the LEED standards and say we're building this with the intent to meet LEEDs? It seems as though that they've developed some proprietary standards and levels of air quality, etc. Are we bypassing them who have developed these standards and say, well, we're not going to get it certified, and return to the organization, the United States Green Building Association, that took the time to develop these standards. We're just going to appropriate them and say that, well, have one of our planners decide, well, it meets the intent of these different levels.
From what I'm hearing you ask is more like a copyright or trademark type of an appropriation, and I can't speak for the Green Building, the U.S. Green Building Commission or Association or Council, but I would think they would be actually happy that we would be utilizing a similar standard, whether we actually want to have it certified by them or just adopt those standards and certify it on our own. I don't believe that would be an appropriation of that would result in any potential legal action by them.
I guess my thoughts are that if we do develop a policy that goes that way, that would save the private developer perhaps hundreds of thousands of dollars in LEED's inspection and accept a LEED's intent, that we require some sort of donation back to the USBGA in recognition of their developing these
I think that
standards.
there's a number of scenarios we can look at along those lines. But I don't have concerns about trademark or other appropriation infringement. The only infringement issues would be essentially the trademark issue that they have or their service mark on the name.
LEEDs.
Yes.
So.
The rating system.
Mr. Mayor, members of the Council Housing Authority and Agency, in that regard, I was most interested in the observation that although you hear people express concern about the cost of LEED certification, the shift in responsibility, if you require that a LEED's standard be met, but not a certification, it kind of shifts the responsibility to your city staff or some other means of making sure that the standards are being met. It seemed to me that the plus of actually requiring LEED certification, and the staff can bring back to you information on the cost of that versus the cost of other ways of certifying, is you've got a group that certifies it. They look at it. They evaluate it. You don't have to take that function in-house and perform it yourself, or you don't have to impose on the developer having some objective independent reviewer come in and tell you, yes, they've designed this facility. So it probably bears taking further look at. First reaction is it's an additional cost, but at the end it may be the most effective way of making sure that that whatever standard you establish if it's LEEDs related is being met.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Yes, Mr. Weaver.
Is it like value engineering? Is it done during the plans and spec stage where they certify?
It's done after they build the project.
Right after.
So you look after and see if they've done it. You don't look at the plans and specs to see if they are heading in that direction.
Well,
I'm sure they look at the plans
might have
during
the
the
staff
process.
respond. My sense is it happens both times.
Because value engineering, if you've heard
Let's
of
see if we can
that,
get an answer from
is during.
Mr. Loomis.
Yeah, actually, Mr. Klapsis could probably answer this question better as a representative of the U.S. Green Building Council, but my understanding is that during the time you're developing the project and during plans and specs, you are specifying green materials, green systems, and there's a certain measure by which you're designing the building to meet LEED Silver, LEED Gold, whatever the certification objective is. But the project is not actually certified by the U.S. Green Building Council until after the building is completed.
understood. But you can't build it and say, well, you didn't do this. Or you'd have to be looking at the plans and expect a reasonableness. They're heading to that point.
Right.
Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, while Mr. Loomis is up here, is there some level of additional training required of city staff then that's reviewing plans?
Yes, I believe that if we were to begin to do that in-house, we'd have to have city staff trained to analyze in the LEED system and be able to do that kind of analysis.
So that seems to me something we should bring back to you. There's that additional cost which the developer is going to pay for in building permit fees, as opposed to having getting LEED certification where they're essentially taking on that role, but there's a cost assigned to that. You may just want to have us evaluate those two respective costs and whether or not the LEED certification really places a significant burden in addition to what we'd be doing.
All right, I'd like to make a couple of comments, and that I would like to add that to my comments. I think that is going to be some direction that I'm going to want to give. I'd like to hear that come back. I'm sorry I looked at you, Mr. Garcia. I'm used to seeing Mr. Hagani sitting in that chair, but he is sitting out here at the moment. So that would be one area. Also, I would like to see Mr. Klapsis meet with, doing it again, would like to have him meet with our planning staff, and since he does serve with the U.S. Green Building Council, to see exactly to what level we think we will need some training and input and guidance for our development community. Because just as Mr. Weaver points out, after the building is built is a little bit, if the intention is to create more sustainable projects, to take a look after the building is built really is going to be counterproductive in my view. So for us to become more educated so that you can then help us become more educated, and then in turn we can help the development community become more educated. So I hope, Mr. Klapsis, that you're going to be available for that purpose, you or your organization.
No pay.
No pay, yes. Yes, in the, with conservation in mind, no pay, yes. I want to also point out how I agree with some of the comments Mr. Yusefian made with regard to sometimes some of the tweaking of our own existing policy. And a perfect example is something that I asked for when I first came to this council, was became aware of the condominiums in our city, where these were condominium groups that were formed years and years and years and years ago, where, for example, in the case that I brought up, we had 112 air conditioning units that were installed in 1974, but our own policy didn't look at buildings where the associations owned those units. Instead, it looked at buildings where the air conditioning units were the responsibility of the homeowner rather than the association. So we extended no benefits in terms of replacing them, no incentive, I should say, in replacing those inefficient units that date back to the mid-1970s with more efficient units, simply because, and they weren't being exchanged or traded out because we extended no incentives. Whereas we do that for a property owner or an apartment house owner or condominium owners where the individual unit owner owned the air conditioning unit, but with the older condominiums where the association owned the units, we extended no incentives. We were able to get that changed, and that's an example how tweaking an existing policy, bringing it up to date, in other words, makes the difference. The Alex Theater is another example. I happened to run into a fellow from who is soliciting solar information to me, and I said, you know what, have you talked to our friends at the Alex Theater? Because this is a unique situation. It's a historic building. You can't just put panels all over it. But by looking at finding organizations that have done this kind of thing throughout the country, they're looking at ways that they can conserve and save money in a significant way, which saves this city significant money because that building operates, obviously, that facility at a loss. So sometimes just tweaking our own policy. So I do agree with that. I am not interested in seeing a commission, nor even necessarily a panel per se. What I am interested in, I think you're looking at it here on this dais. I think what we do need is to answer some of the questions that were mentioned by the speaker, Mr. Khan, and that is if we expect the development community in the city of Glendale to embrace this, to get on board, we all have to understand it. They all have to understand exactly what do we mean and how do we get there. As one of two council members who asked for this to be agendized in the first place, I brought it up as chair of the Redevelopment Agency, and then that evening Mr. Quintero brought it up during the council meeting. I am very anxious to see us get going now. We're not reinventing the wheel, as all of my colleagues I think have pointed out. This is hardly brand new. It's just brand new that Glendale's getting on board, and we need to do that now. We need to be leaders in this city, and so as part of my I guess you'd call it direction, I would like to send you, Mr. Ghani, a box of matches to light that fire, or perhaps some clean burning natural gas. I don't know, but we need to get a fire lit on this, and I don't think we need to wait very long. Just as Mr. Khan pointed out, even though development in this city is a little slower right now, it won't always be that way. And I would like to see this extended not just to our own projects, but to to private development as well. Mr. Yusefian.
Mr. Mayor, I was around when Title 24 was enacted. This is no different.
How old are you?
Yeah, too old. Title 24, basically, after it was enacted, it went around and it actually started making some of the requirements in the building code. So your primary lighting in the kitchen had to be fluorescent, and bathrooms had to be fluorescent, and you had to go do an analysis for your heating and air conditioning, and so on and so forth. All of these things came in originally as an idea, and then later on it was implemented through a code. So when an inspector shows up to the job site, they actually check a list. Is it fluorescent? Is it this? Is the primary lighting this? Is it that? So I think to do this is no different to an extent. You can codify a lot of these things. And while you don't need to create a new commission, you already have one. It's called Building and Fire, and we already have one. And they don't even meet because they have nothing to do. And in my opinion, I think you should take the building official and with the gentleman over there, go to that commission and come up with codes. Because builders, let me tell you what we understand. We don't understand this stuff that is just stuff that planners understand. Just tell me black and white, what do you want me to do? And in a code fashion, I can understand that. So if you want to tell me, you know what, you can't use oak floors, because what we want you to do is to use either laminates, or we want you to use renewable floor, which is, let's say, bamboo. Just spell it out. That's what we would put in, because that's easy to understand. The inspector walks in, looks at it, says, that's what I want you to put in. But when you start getting in this fuzzy stuff, you lose a lot of builders, because they're not planners, they're builders. They implement code. And it's much easier for a builder and a developer to cost out the code. And so if you want 15 Sears, I understand it. You want 21 Sears, Infinity from Carrier, I understand it. But some of the other stuff, I'm not going to get that. The architect will understand, having double skin walls and so on and so forth, and he would do the drawings. Now, on the issue that Mr. Starbird mentioned, I think it's a twofold thing. You do the drawings that meet the standards, because you have to have something to go by. And then you need to have somebody else to go and verify that you built according to those drawings. But ultimately, part of the LEED certification is that somebody from LEEDs goes there to make sure those systems work. And he's right. It happened to us in the police building. Let's not forget, we ran into systems that they were supposed to work, and they didn't work. They were completely going the opposite direction. So it happens in regular construction jobs. You turn on a switch, and the wrong thing comes on. It happens. So that's what they do. They basically go there and say, listen, if you have a $2 million air conditioning system and it's supposed to generate this much of a volume of air coming in, and it's supposed to reduce the temperature by this many degrees, this chiller is not operating to its full potential, and it's only reducing it this much, hence you have to run it longer, it costs you more energy, and they go back and they find out sometimes people just put the units in backwards, and they correct that. So to an extent, that's to the benefit of the builder. Then the builder goes after the contractor and let him deal with that. But that, I think you need both to do this. And I do agree. I don't think our people should go out there and do all these inspections and provide certifications. Let them do the certifications, but we need to have the training so as they're doing the plan check, they can understand what is it that you need to build. And I think the public can be educated as the staff is getting educated by the Building and Fire Commission, and they're televised, they got something to do, and everybody gets an opportunity to understand what's going on.
While I'm there, let me put in a plug for the Building and Fire Commission. We have no applications, and I've been waiting to make an appointment to that commission.
He lives in Glendale. Why don't you just appoint him right now?
I think since I came to council, so a little over a year, I've been waiting for an application to come in, so...
So, Mr. Mayor,
gonna see
you're
me-
sending a hint, right?
See me a
You got the
little
hint?
later, Mr. Klapsis will...
There's your hint.
Mr. Quintero.
If the discussion is completed, I'm prepared to move 1A and 1B.
Well, let me just see. Are there any further comments from the council?
Mr. Mayor, are these council motions?
They are both
council motions. And
Second.
whether or not there was going to be, you may want to separate them because 1B deals with private and it also deals with the
Right.
general plan issue, whether or not you want to fold this into the process for a general plan amendment as opposed to having something faster.
I'm not for holding it for general plan. I think we
No,
should...
I
should
agree
just
with
move.
that. Any other, is there a consensus to move this forward a bit?
Move it.
Okay, I'll move 1A and to incorporate some of the comments from the city council as well as the housing commissioners.
Is that good
You
enough?
already second that?
Is that on 1A?
The 1A was seconded.
That's 1A, 1 and 2.
Move that for the city council.
Second?
All right.
You were seconding 1B?
Oh, it's 1A.
1A. 1A was seconded by Councilmember Najarian. Would you like roll call?
Yes, I would.
Councilmembers Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian.
Aye.
Mayor Draymond.
Yes.
Move 1B with foregoing the general plan amendment. I think we should just move forward, and we should also include some of the pertinent parts about just regular development. That is not, private development.
Forego the advisory group.
Right, advisory group. No advisory group. You can go to building
We
committee.
have a motion and a second.
No general plan, no advisory group.
No.
Right.
Code.
Mr. Kasaki, if you please.
Councilmembers Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian.
Aye.
Mayor Draymond.
Yes.
Move to adjourn for council?
Second? Move to adjourn for redevelopment?
Second.
Move to adjourn for housing.
Second?
We're adjourned.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.